Hello and welcome to episode 109 of the Foundry Roundtable, podcast exclusively covering the Foundry for Star Trek Online. I'm your tame Foundry author, Drogan1701. With me is a man who announced his candidacy for president this week, Greendragoon.
Well, I mean,
president of what?
Whatever it is, I'm sure I can't do any worse.
And a man who forgot to take his spacesuit with him, so please welcome from the surface of Pluto, Markhawkman's corpse. Silence there.
Oh,
we'll resurrect him in a minute.
Oh, I forgot to unmute myself. Darn it.
Ah, there we go.
Which is funny because
forgetful of many things.
The funny thing here, though, is that I actually am wearing an EV suit.
And our guest tonight, a brand new face, or voice, actually, to have on the Foundry Roundtable. Please welcome Sutherland.
Hello.
Now, we've gone through several name changes on the forums over the years. What do you go by on the forums these days?
Faye8472.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I'm glad to have you on the roundtable today because I actually want to ask you some questions, but we'll do that a little bit later on because we got to start with some news. First off, we have to say a sad but not, like grief-stricken or anything farewell to two of our favorite people at Cryptic, Kestrel and Frost. They are moving on to hopefully new and fun adventures.
Yep. I know definitely we're going to miss them, but it sounds like it's a fully and amicable departure, and they're leaving to take off for new opportunities.
Well, of course, Frost is our QA guy who likes to or liked to come in the Foundry forums and look up issues for us and help us with things and get feedback from us. That was greatly appreciated over the years. And of course, Kestrel was the writer for Star Trek Online. Wrote just a lot of episodes, not every episode, but quite a lot of them. As a sort of tribute, we're here in Starbase 39 tonight because it's the only place that we can see remnants of Dividet and Para with Admiral Zell over there.
And of course, the significance of Divided and Para, other than being a removed mission, is that it was Kestrel actually originally intended it to be an arc that never got made.
Like a three-parter, I believe.
So
and it's also one of probably the single Cryptic episode to have spawned multiple Foundry episodes.
It may have been controversial, but that's kind of what...
Just because of the sheer confusion it inspired in the player base when they're like, what the heck just happened?
People wanted to follow up on it. They wanted to expand on it and explain it and things like that. So it got a response, and that's all we're hoping for when we make a mission, right?
Yeah, I mean,
get some kind of response, even if it's sometimes hatred, sometimes people love it. I liked the episode, personally.
I somewhat dislike the ones that invoke hatred.
I mean, there's something to said about a mission that invokes feelings in people, even if it isn't always positive ones.
Then again, sometimes I know Rogue Enterprise likes to post some of his Foundry reviews on Twitter, and I mean, some of them just, especially his Orders series, it's a very controversial series, and it inspired a lot of people. It's like they had inspired some emotional reactions in people, and I thought to myself, I think that's a success, even if it's negative emotional reaction, because they could easily just not care about what they just played. But it sounds like when somebody takes the time to an emotional thing to actually hate what they just played and feel something, that's an accomplishment.
I don't want to make it sound like everybody hated his missions. I mean, there were definitely a lot of people that absolutely loved him. So it was kind of a love-hate thing.
You had some reactions to his missions, as I recall.
I did.
Didn't you
I
play?
mean, I felt he was kind of railroading. Did a lot of railroading in order to get certain situations to happen that he wanted. I certainly didn't hate it.
Speaking of railroading, I think one of the things we're going to do tonight is talk about the latest couple of featured episodes. But first, more news. I went on Tribble this week, actually earlier today, just to check and see if the fix to the 2D editor display bug has been fixed. It is not in the latest Tribble build, but it's a big thing. There was something like 9,000 assets it had to go through.
Yeah, something like that.
We don't know when that fix will go in, but we're confident.
I don't think Zero actually gave us a number. She just said a lot.
She did give a number.
She said over 9,000, but that may be that joke from I think it's from an anime thing.
I think it's Dragon Ball Z.
No, yeah, but that I think the over 9,000 thing was one of the people who was reposting it on the forums added that in.
That's also possible.
But personally, I would
it's a
guess
lot.
That based on the way she described it, it involves some fundamental change to the way the image files are stored in the game, which means you would have to literally update every single one of the files that is being used to generate the previews.
Exactly. It's a massive update, and we don't know what build it will go in, but I'm confident that it will before too long. I know we'll all be happy to see that thing go away. Get our actual images of things back.
Yeah, I know that's kind of my biggest holdup in getting back to Midas Part 3.
Well, not that you weren't going to spend years on that anyway, right?
Yes, but when even I am starting to ask, when is Part 3 going to get out?
Let's see. What else? We did have... Since our last show was actually almost 2 weeks ago, we did have Season 10.5 drop. Had a new featured episode, new fleet holding, and armadas. So we're all getting situated with those. So let's see. Why don't we start by talking about the featured episode?
Okay. Well, going into this, I'm just going to throw up the spoiler warning. Anyone listening here who hasn't played it, you have been warned.
You have been warned. Primar says he's seeing his name too many times on the chat window, so he better shut up. It's like, no, that's all right, Primar. Keep going. The more you talk, hopefully the more other people will talk. So, yeah, the featured episode, Broken Circle. It starts off with a mission briefing where you go talk to Nog and 7 of 9 and a Krenim character about the new temporal weapon that they are building, which isn't ready yet. Since the last episode where you first met the Krenim. And since it isn't ready, Captain Kagrin decides to launch an all-out attack. Which I think is... Go ahead.
I was going to say, I get the impression from the what's implied that we've been losing civilian targets to the Iconians, and now so we're getting into a very desperate situation.
Oh yeah, not implied. I mean, he outright states it, that they've, there's been attacks all over the place, lots of casualties. I think he feels a certain sense of desperation, and he decides on an all-out attack instead of waiting for the weapon.
Well, I got the impression that he was trying to distract the Iconians and keep them preoccupied and keep them from searching for the weapon.
Yeah, and I have that thought as well.
I mean, while I would like to make a joke about how there are many kinds of intelligence in the universe and Klingons don't have any of them, in this case, that really doesn't seem to apply simply because of the fact that the technique that's being used to hide the weapon as it's constructed, and indeed all of the Krenim stuff, once the Iconians figure that out, we're screwed. It's kind of like that duck blind thing where once people realize you're there, you're completely compromised.
Yeah, so he may have ordered this attack to play for time, essentially. It kind of reminds me a little bit of how Captain Sisko, at the start of the Dominion War, he fought to defend Deep Space Nine, even though they knew they couldn't, in order to keep Dominion forces occupied there, while a Federation Klingon fleet hit another target. So it's a diversionary assault, essentially. But he doesn't say that. It's not in the dialogue.
I think
what you get from the dialogue, it seems more like, this isn't. I don't think this is working, so let's attack.
Well, he does say something or other about how they can't afford to wait until the weapon is completed. I mean, it's just like this little brief line that he doesn't expound on, but it's there, even if only for a second.
Sure. And it may be a case that it's pretty clear that from a storytelling standpoint, Cryptic is building up the severity of the situation to the point where we're obviously the weapon is our only options. Like either it's going to be we're at risk of losing everything, or we lose everything, and then our only option is do something, or there's nothing left.
Because I know people are going to ask the morality questions of, is it right to use this weapon? Which the episode Year of Hell did a very good job at.
Well, actually, one of the things with the Year of Hell is that they established that using the weapon will have unforeseeable consequences. Mm-hmm. The question is whether they're consequences we can live with or not.
True.
All right, so one thing let's go ahead and tackle one of the big discussion points in this early point of the mission. That is, there's a lot of debate about the morality of using the weapon, even in the mission. And
sure.
At least two different opportunities that the player can make their objections. Obviously, the stories continue forward, and everyone's like, "Look, we're kind of running out of options here." Even the guy from Temporal Investigations is like, "Look, I'm generally opposed to this sort of thing, but in this case, we may not have a choice."
Yeah, unfortunately, the way Star Trek Online is structured, it doesn't give you the option to really have your captain raise objections to things and have people listen to you and not do something instead of do something that they would do anyway.
It's a matter of choosing different paths to get to the same end result. You're always going to get to the same end result.
You're always going to, you have to. I mean, that's just how the game is built. And if we could get to two different endpoints, if Cryptic could do that, that'd be fantastic for something like this.
But,
But I don't think they can. And we know all about that in the Foundry, don't we?
Yeah.
Something I've noticed that a lot of people assume, I've been kind of just reading in the forums and stuff, is they assume that the weapon has to be aimed at a populated location. Because
which we know from the episode it does not.
It does not. It can... Chakotay was looking for things that he could shoot at that were innocuous. Now, in a lot of his scenarios, he would try to destroy something innocuous and later find that object had some impact on a civilized world.
One of them was zapping a comet out of existence and accidentally erasing a sentient species because without that comet, that particular sentient species would never have evolved or something.
Yeah.
Then there was another occasion. Actually, the first time the weapon was ever seen in use was when Anorax actually used it to erase a Zol city. Not a planet, not the entire Zol race, but one specific Zol city.
Yeah, obviously
So, I
the
mean,
planet itself was still there but it was uninhabited.
Yep. So, obviously it can be used with pinpoint precision. The question is whether we will find a proper target for such.
And of course, the other question lots of people are asking is, is this going to be a playable ship?
I'm going to go with yes. It just feels like the sort of thing they're going to do.
And then the question after that is, is it going to be playable in just one episode like we have seen them do before, or you actually get to fly it whenever you want? It'll be a regular player ship.
They've never made a ship playable only in an episode. All of the ships that were playable in an episode that you don't actually own are playable in some way outside that episode. I mean, Doomsday Device has a Federation.
Yeah, that's the closest that we sort of get to this.
Pilot a Klingon ship, but Klingon players can pilot those ships freely. No, seriously, you actually get those for free as your starter ship Klingon side.
So, I think if they do release it, it'll be like one of those super rare DOF pack ships. But
probably.
I don't know. I mean, obviously they're going to have to write in some kind of explanation of why a player version of it can't zap away anything in front of it.
Well, one thing 7 of 9 and Nog mentioned is that the weapon itself is fantastically expensive to construct, even by Starfleet standards.
And they may be setting that up.
The ship itself is actually just like a regular space frame that they just threw together in a matter of days or weeks. It's like, okay, you want to ship in this shape? Okay, done.
It may be a case that they're setting it up for an explanation of why the ship isn't available to players, that it's so one of a kind. I mean, it's not like, say, a Borg cube, which obviously we can't fly, but there are lots of them. Even, I mean, every ship the players have, there's some explanation for more than one. But I mean, in this case, it may be that it's just simply too powerful a ship to put in player hands.
Well, one thing that they mentioned here is that they were having difficulties getting certain aspects of it to work properly, such as I think they said they hadn't figured out how to make the temporal shielding work, so that in its current state, if you were to fire the weapon, you would be affected by whatever the weapon did. You wouldn't be able to observe the results, and you might erase yourself from existence.
Yeah.
But in any case, that speculation for upcoming episodes, of which we assume there will be at least 1 or 2, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
And something else I kind of want to point out is that I think they are as much as, I mean, everybody's kind of quoting Year of Hell as this is a bad idea, this is a bad idea, and I think the point is you are absolutely right. It is a bad idea, and that's where the story conflict is coming from. Mm-hmm. I think we are going to use the weapon.
And your player recognizes that, or can, if you choose that dialogue option.
I think we are going to use the weapon. I think something will go wrong, and that'll be the subject of future featured episodes.
Yeah, probably. I mean, because this seems like the sort of situation like with the Enterprise C, where, the episode involves us looking at a horrible future, and we have to find a way to avert that.
Yeah.
Although, now that I think about it, the Enterprise C episode was only a horrible future from the point of view of the people from the past, but minor detail.
So, moving on from there, the attack is ordered. One thing must be said: you see absolutely just huge numbers of ships in the background in these space maps, which is kind of fun. My only complaint there is that they're all kind of haphazard. It's like, didn't anybody fly in formation here?
I think it's kind of meant to show the chaos, because I mean, by the time you get to the battle a little late. I mean, there's some delay.
No, I mean, in orbit of the science station first.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know that much about Starfleet.
You see a huge armada out there, and they're just sort of clumped and all over the place.
It didn't strike me as a battle formation. It seemed more like a we're here now. What are we going to do? Sort of arrangement.
Well, I mean, the battle isn't at the science station. It's actually at the Dyson Sphere.
No. Once you get to the battle, of course, everything is naturally chaotic because, as Azure Alliance in the chat room points out, no plan survives contact with the enemy.
But I mean, would they form a battle formation before they got to the battlefront?
I think they would.
Well, did they? I mean, you're in the Delta Quadrant. I mean, presumably it took us a while, like days, to get to the Iconian system, even via the gateways.
I would guess that transwarp technology was involved.
Yeah, but
it's not really mentioned, is it?
Yeah.
Nope.
Well, but yeah,
the passage of time and distance is something that Stowe doesn't really do very well. So, maybe it took you days to get to the battlefront.
Yeah.
Maybe that battle's been going on for days by the time you get there. It's hard to tell.
Mm-hmm.
But in any case, you form up with the Delta Flight guys, Tom Paris's band of merry men and women, and you try to break through the middle of this thing and get inside the sphere. While sacrificing one of your pilots, which is...
We don't actually get inside the Herald Sphere.
Well, we do eventually, but...
No. We go through a gateway to a different sphere.
Well, they make mention that it's something that we've been assaulting for a while.
Yeah, it's the one from the...
it's the one from the Herald Sphere PvE is my understanding of it.
Gateway to Grethor.
Yeah, no,
not Gateway to Grethor.
The Herald Sphere is the name of it.
Yeah, the Herald Sphere.
Well,
which is somebody, and I think it was you, Dragoon, who pointed out to me that this is not the same sphere that appeared at the end of the Sela episode.
Yeah.
Right?
Did I point that out? I thought it was the same one.
Well, at some point I thought it was the same sphere, and somebody said it wasn't.
The sphere from the PvE Qui is not the same one that appeared at Iconia. Actually, it was the one that you attack in the Herald Sphere PvE Qui is actually something whose existence we discovered when we made that raid in Delta Flight, because we acquired data from the Iconian computer stuff about how they've been routing some of their gateways through this sphere and using it as, I guess, a relay or something. And so we attacked that to disrupt their transportation network.
SFC 100 is agreeing with you. And actually, going back a little bit, he makes an interesting point, which is, all of this stuff with the temporal incursion weapon, it could, a friend of his pointed out that it could set up the whole temporal accords thing, which is mentioned in Enterprise.
I'd consider that.
that something like that could be season 11.
Well, one thing about the temporal accords is that they left it very open-ended in Enterprise as to who was a member.
Yes, it did.
There were a few races we know were not members, and one race we know to have been more or less a member, even though they didn't want to be a member. Because we know that the Tholians and the Suliban did not sign the temporal accords. Granted, they had interests in pursuit of time travel technology, but neither one of them was actually part of the temporal accords. The other was, of course, the Nakul, who were basically the evil time traveler people who were forced to respect the temporal accords, even though they didn't want to.
And Pac says he's thinking the other that the Iconians keep mentioning is Future Guy, who, of course, we know from behind-the-scenes stuff is that they intended to be Archer himself. That'd be fun to get Scott Bakula to do some voiceover. If we can tear him away from Louisiana.
A time travel story does seem to be the best way to involve Star Trek Enterprise and so that's for sure.
Just about, yeah.
Well, I mean, it could be we're talking about or plot threads that could extend well past the end of the Iconian War. I mean, it's very possible that our use of the weapon could set up something else.
Another year's worth of content planned out, at least, and I'm sure they, with the planning cycle, I'm sure they keep on planning. And
they've hinted that they have a major announcement planned for STLV this year, and given what happened last year...
The timing is probably something Season 11 related.
Or
never
maybe,
know.
I don't know.
Unless
could be
they moved up the expansion cycle, I don't know.
Or they're just announcing it further out.
Yeah.
I mean, if the expansion isn't coming until, like, June of
December.
next year.
Well, I don't know.
They could
we
announce
don't know
it
exactly
still.
If it stays on the same schedule.
If. We don't know that.
If. We never know. That's okay. That's what we got to live with, right? So let's see. We have this attack, and you finally make it inside, and have a nice big battle inside, and unfortunately, you're forced to retreat. However, before you do, you have the big part of the episode, which is spoiler alert again, double spoiler alert, killing an Iconian.
Yep. Was it Mutara? Is the one we killed?
Imtara.
Yeah.
Imtara.
However you pronounce it.
Yes, and I actually
That's
really
okay.
do
She's not
like
my
this.
favorite.
I really do like this battle because you're going up against this Iconian, but you're given some technobabble reason of why you have a chance against her this time. But even with this chance, they make it a challenge. They make it that you have to do a lot of work in order to weaken her enough that you can actually kill her. And that is, I think, is just great at setting up like just how screwed we are when, and more spoilery alerts, when you manage to kill her, the other Iconians find out and they're like, "Screw you guys, we're coming for you now."
Well, I mean, one thing that we discovered in Sphere of Influence is that they're planning on killing us eventually anyway.
Well, they're trying to subjugate us. There's a difference.
Well, no, it's because in the some of the computer consoles in Sphere of Influence, what they want to subjugate the galaxy as a whole. Certain specific races they have decided are too bothersome to be worthy of subjugation, and that it would be better for their purposes to simply eradicate them. One of those races is Romulans, and another one is the humans.
Yeah, but I mean, they've been playing it safe up till now. I mean, especially the conversation that we saw on Kiana Prime was one that they shows that that they're not moving at their full force to try and they're playing the long game. And Mutara especially was kind of urging caution, sticking to the plan, don't rush ahead. And her death kind of basically shifts the balance and kicks them into, okay, that's it, we're coming now, we're just going to wipe you guys out, we're done with you.
I think Imtara's goal there, I guess the best way to put it, is she remembers what happened last time they fought the galaxy as a whole. And I think Imtara was trying to avoid making the mistakes that the Iconians made last time.
Yeah, I mean...
Sorry about that, guys. My PC just conked out then.
Oh,
it's okay.
I was wondering why you're so quiet.
I
were just talking about
I noticed that you disappeared in-game, and eventually...
Matara got me.
Matara got revenge on you, I guess.
Or Ticket, rather.
So we've been obviously talking about the featured episode. I don't know, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. I'm still struggling to understand why we attacked the Herald Sphere.
Last-ditch effort because we're losing.
Yeah, but now we're in a worse position because we attacked it.
Well,
yeah, but I don't know.
A bit, yeah. I mean, we lost a lot. It's one of those, you call it a Pyrrhic victory, where, yeah, we killed a Iconian, but we lost a lot of people, and was it really worth it?
We disrupted the Iconians' plan. We forced them to do something they didn't want to do. And time will tell if that was actually worth it or not. It cost us a whole lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing that lately I've been watching a documentary series on World War I, and part of any story about that war is the sheer incompetence of a ton of generals. People make it to high ranks without necessarily having any ability at all. You see this in a lot of things, not just war. So, there's nothing to say that, Captain, what's his name on the Klingon Empire side, there's nothing to say he's a military genius here. Maybe it was a bad plan. Bad plans happen.
It was definitely a desperate plan.
Well, see, because the one thing that I thought of that it greatly reminded me of was the Klingons in the motion picture. Do you remember what their plan was?
We don't understand this thing. Let's shoot it.
We're going to destroy V'ger by firing photon torpedoes at it.
It worked for everything else.
Yeah, we all know what happened to those Klingons.
Maybe we just shouldn't have a Klingon in charge.
Okay, so whenever judging history and kind of even judging this mission after the fact, is that hindsight is 20/20. Obviously, none of us knew what was going to happen going into this mission. And did you guys actually think, oh, well, attacking Mutar is a bad idea while the mission was happening, or is that something you realized after the fact? Oh, now I realize it's a bad idea. I mean, we kind of like to judge from the comfort of the future.
Given the fact that I RP my character as a mirror universe augment, she's actually one of those people who's cocky enough to try taking an Iconian in hand-to-hand combat.
So it fit pretty good for your character.
Well, that's a Radiant anyway. Karnland, that I'm currently logged in as, yeah, he would not do that, but No,
I mean, to me, as we were sitting in that briefing, I mean, it didn't seem like a great idea to me.
Yeah.
It seemed like, no, we need to, keep holding on till the weapon is done, rather than wasting ships in a frontal assault.
And if the projections showed that we wouldn't last that long?
Well, we're working on something to change time, so we can change time.
Yeah, but not if we fall before you can use it.
Yeah.
That's really...
No, that's true. And that's the debate.
I brought up earlier is that the tech that Krenim are using to hide the weapon as they construct it is basically a form of stealth. And if the Iconians figure out how to see through it, which they clearly have not yet, well, then anything we're hiding with it is going to be no longer hidden.
This discussion seems to have ignited a lot of Klingon prejudice in our chat room.
Come now, Klingons are. Don't go.
They're our
picking on the
allies.
Klingons.
Come on, for now. I think what they should do after this is do that Temporal Accord storyline and have the Klingons not be signatories and put them at odds with the Federation again.
I don't know. After all the trouble they went to get in the war, I'm not sure.
Blue.
I'm not sure we want to bring back the war. That was one of those old big debates.
I might be in a minority. I might be in the minority about that.
Well, one thing that occurs to me about this is that while there are several different things they can do, it seems like the most interesting one is to expand the scope of the game as it goes forward. I mean, because we've had hints that the Iconians have the technology required to quickly enter and leave the Andromeda Galaxy. And as you may remember from a certain mission with Sela, the player has gone to the Andromeda Galaxy.
Briefly.
Or specifically the Fear in the Andromeda.
So it's possible that at some point in the future, the Stowe storyline is going to have the players, going to the Andromeda Galaxy for more than just 5 minutes.
Honestly, I mean, at this point, it could be literally anything. I mean, we have no basis on which to speculate.
Well, yeah, we might go to the Gamma Quadrant. There's also that possibility.
Well, if you really want to go to the Andromeda Galaxy, make sure to pick up the next Mass Effect game whenever that gets released.
Probably in 2016 or something like that.
Something like that. Anyway, so, the attack essentially is a Pyrrhic victory. You will have to withdraw, but you have kind of an evocative scene where you go through the debris field with all the burning ships, which is very sad. Kind of brings back
Wolf 359.
The aftermath of Wolf 359, exactly. And then you're all safe and sound, at least your crew is. But you did lose something like a third of the fleet, I believe, is the line, and I don't know if it means a third of that fleet or a third of the overall fleet.
I want to say it's
bad.
Yeah, it's a third of the overall Alliance fleet.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Of course, this is just the Klingon Empire, United Federation of Planets, and the Romulan Republic, so it's entirely possible that this is going to be the impetus for acquiring more allies to fight the Iconians.
Sir Bollard points out an interesting thing is that in the briefing in the beginning, Sean, Jarok, and Quinn are all there. I don't think any of them have any lines, but they're all there. And they're missing afterwards. Could some of them have been in the battle?
Well, the reason why I didn't consider that to be particularly significant is that the time you go back to the Krenim facility at the end of the mission, the way I read it, there was no reason for them to be there.
True, that facility is not a shipyard. It wouldn't be, they'd go where the fleet was going to get everybody patched up as best they could.
I mean, because if I remember right, was Philip Cray there at the second part either?
I do not remember. But in any case, that may or may not be a significant thing.
I doubt they're going to kill off those specific NPCs simply because of the...
well, not off screen.
Yeah.
If they kill them, I hope it's in a big way.
So I was reminded of something, and that is that we are almost certainly about ready to get into some temporal shenanigans. And when you
I do
get
hope
into
that's the name of the next episode. Or
When
even
you-
season 11. Temporal
when you-
Shenanigans.
when you get involved in temporal shenanigans, all bets are off, not only for the present, but also for how the past played out, especially with a weapon like this. So
Yeah.
we could hypothetically alter history in such a way that I think someone was hoping that Martok would come back.
Yeah, in the chat room. They're saying Martok and Worf are the only competent Klingons.
That's because they were main characters. It's the same. It's the same effect of why every single admiral in Starfleet is incompetent and
Or evil.
yeah, it's like
They're either incompetent or evil. Occasionally both.
All of those
but
other...
Actually, Nora Sadie was both.
All of those other Klingons, they were all very competent. They just had the misfortune to come up against main characters. So they had to lose.
Well, there was also Gowron. Wait.
Yeah, but Gowron was kind of fun.
Gowron is actually shown to be kind of, becoming sort of... I don't know. He was a politician who decided he wanted to be a commander. And failed.
Well, the thing I remember most about Gowron's character was this one scene where Worf and Gowron are discussing military strategy in the council chamber and how they're planning on handling the Dominion War, blah, blah, blah. Someone comes up to Gowron and issues a personal challenge to him, and Worf's like, "What? We don't have time for this." And then Gowron just basically shanks the guy who challenged him. And he's like, "Okay, now we can go back to military planning."
Yeah, but I think that was to illustrate the differences between Worf's understanding and the actual Klingon culture. I don't think that was specifically a
Which that's
jab
been
at
going on
Gowron.
for a long time. I mean,
Yeah.
You saw that in Redemption as well.
Well, part of the reason why this caught my attention is because it was yet another use of the crazy Gowron eyes. Because it's like Gowron just has air around him like he's a complete lunatic, even though he doesn't really do things that are totally insane. He just kind of acts the part.
Well, anyway, let's wrap this up. Final thoughts on this episode?
I enjoyed it.
One of the coolest things I noticed in it is that there are actually 3 different sets of beam effects for those energy conduits you shut off inside the Iconian ship. It was one of those things I didn't initially notice, but then later on I'm like, oh, that's cool. Because, the first time it's just a straight beam going down, like very boring looking. But each time you do it again, the beam has more texture to it.
So one thing I will say about the mission, a small critique, is that at this point it feels like the plot is dragging its heels on the whole temporal weapon thing. We have now had 2 episodes where we're talking, oh yeah, there's this temporal weapon, we're building up to this temporal weapon, and we can all kind of see that it's the climax coming. So we're kind of just itching, so okay, let's get to the temporal weapon thing.
Well,
I posted on Twitter that I felt like these episodes, they're like a TV show where waiting so long between episodes, it kind of makes them not as good. But if you were to play them all together, the binge watch, as people call it now, they'd be great. Like really great. Like if it was a featured episode series and released
That's true.
very quickly. Instead of the long release schedule we have now.
That's one thing I thought of here is that it's kind of like what you said, is that the writers plan out, we're going to do 5 episodes, so we're going to do this, and this in each of the episodes, and then they end up with a little bit of filler because it's just the way it worked out. which that kind of it's the way it feels like in this episode, because we had to go through 3 different sets of those things you shut off to weaken Imtara enough to finally be able to finish her off. And that's one of those things, is that ground map, if all you did was go in, sabotage the ship, and then have Imtara die when the ship explodes after you sabotaged it, that would, make things far less interesting.
Gentlemen, unfortunately, I am going to have to leave. We got to have a large storm bearing down on me here. Possible hail. And I don't have a garage for my new car, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to, for those of you listening in the chat room, this is sort of the dangers of live broadcasting. We can't just stop the recording and pick up another time, but provide Dragoon here with my show notes, and he can carry on with some Foundry demonstrations later on, and Mark has some reviews, and you guys can all talk about what you've been working on.
Okay, then.
If that works for you guys, I'll briefly cover what I've been working on, which is I discovered today I was building the lobby from the Matrix without really intending it, but I just went with it because it's still pretty cool. And then I was making a building explode, which is also fun. Lots of explosions. So I will have to sign off for the moment, but you guys enjoy.
Okay.
And I will see everyone next time.
All right.
All right. Take care, Durgan.
Good night.
All right. So on that note, Mark, you have some reviews? Well, I should say, let's go on to what we've been working on.
I actually haven't gotten much done since the last show. I kind of tinkered with things a little bit, but the specific props I was trying to work with, I realized that there was absolutely no way I could place them with any degree of certainty as to their location without being able to actually see the outlines in the editor, because these specific wall objects were one of those that was not only pixelated, but horribly distorted out of shape. So the only way I was able to even make a half-baked guess as to what their position was to look at the center point little button and place that approximately the center of where I think the object center should be.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've been kind of running into similar issues with it's really hard to build anything right now. But hopefully, I mean, a fix is coming soon.
I mean, if it was just that the objects were funny colored, then it would be a minor inconvenience to work with. Or less major, I should say, because it would still have that issue with where objects would overlap with each other, but
So, Sutherland?
How about you guys?
I was going to say, have you been working on anything, Sutherland? And I think we lost him. Well,
he posted something on the forum about how he'd updated Death at Molrihan again. And apparently he hasn't completely finished that mission. He's been working on it and doesn't have it finished just yet, but I don't know the exact details. I remember apparently he finally got around to adding the 2 characters that he was borrowing from me for the mission, one of which was Iridian, and the last thing he posted in the forum thread was an updated version of the character costume for Iridian.
Okay. Well, I haven't been doing too much in the Foundry, but I've been kind of looking at an issue, which I think I mentioned before with the end of Midas Part 1, where it's a little too easy right now to bypass some of the story elements in the final map, because they're all trigger-based, and it requires that they hit certain or destroy certain ships that aren't necessarily objectives. So if they manage to get past the ship, either by being cloaked or going fast enough at full impulse, they can overshoot and not get bogged down by the NPC, or get out of range of the NPC, and that can cause issues. So I'm kind of looking at ways to fix that. So it's either going to be something along the lines of just having it built into the objectives. So there's objectives that you have to destroy, A, B, and C, which is probably the safest thing to do. Something else I might try though is having pop-up dialogues just as they get into range, so they're forced out of full impulse, and then the enemies attack, which might help with both the cloak and the full impulse issue. That's kind of what I'm thinking of right now. Obviously, it's a kind of a tricky thing. I mean, other than that, I got my Spotlight republished. Zero Rex was kind enough to republish it for me. I made a few tweaks into it, mostly just changing how the initial ambush happens in the meeting hall, so that the enemy doesn't accidentally attack early. And cleaned up a couple of things as far as putting indicators down for where people should go. But overall, not too much has changed. All right, so Mark, you had a review?
Well, two actually. One of them is I just grabbed a random mission that looked like it sounded interesting, Fed side, which was, a top 3 mission. And let's see here, it was called Magi's Labyrinth 1, space Risa, by a user named Imzadi Diana. This is actually one of those like story/puzzle things, except that it goes a lot heavier on puzzle than story, because the little bit of story attached to it is basically that it's training exercise type thing. This rather enigmatic character named Magi has extended an invitation to a challenge for you to participate in, and you go in through this cave on Risa and find people that are hiding in the cave. Actually, I think the part that the story was that they got lost in there while hiking or something, but they didn't act like they were lost. Anyways, though, it was actually a pretty fun puzzle-solving thing, because the way this person had constructed the cave interior was rather cool, because they set it up so that everything looked like, like what you would expect for like a natural cave. So all the props were actually more or less about the same color. And also the way they set it up is that you actually had to do a variety of things to find the people. So like, there's this one person where they actually set one of the characters that you have to find on a patrol route, where she walks through this giant room filled with a whole bunch of plants and rocks, and you have to find her while she's walking through the room. Which is surprisingly annoying, because when you set up an NPC like that, it draws the bubble around the entire patrol route, apparently.
Well, is it kind of meant as a challenge to find her?
Well, yes, that's just it. Is that it's, like I said, it's largely a puzzle-solving thing. So the challenge in this mission is in figuring out how to achieve the objectives, because without all the rocks and bits of debris in the way impeding your path, you could just like walk up to the various 8 or so NPCs, talk to them, and then the mission would be over with, and that would be short and boring. Oh yeah, that was the other thing I was going to mention, is that he actually made the map that you're working your way through three-dimensionally complicated, because there's this one point where you have to climb up over a rock ledge to get to one of the objectives you have, and you can't simply it's not as simple as walking behind a rock. You jump on top of a rock, jump on top of a different rock, then you walk around behind a rock wall and go down into this hidden room, and that's how you find one of the groups of people. Which, I actually found that to be really cool, simply because of the fact that I had to look at it 2 or 3 times to figure out exactly where I needed to go to find these people. And even after I figured it out, I guess you'd say it just felt like it belonged that way or something. It just, I guess you'd say it felt right. It didn't feel like it was like a forced, contrived maze. It felt like, like what you would have if you're actually exploring a cave. Except for the fact that real caves don't have that many plants. But, that's something he was stuck with for the stock map.
Now, how much modification did he do of the stock map?
Okay. Let's see, he actually had a space map where you enter orbit around the planet Risa. He had an exterior ground map where you beam down, talk to Magi, and then head to the entrance of the cave. Then you had the interior of the cave itself, which that one was heavily modified. I mean, because it was one of those things where you look around, and I know what it looks like when you don't have modifications, and I couldn't see it. I mean, I look around, I see stuff he placed on the map to change the way it looked, and it actually took effort for me to find any part of the stock map other than the floor. Then you go back to the Risa surface map again, and I think that's where it ends. And then you talk to Magi after you finished going through the cave. Yeah, those maps don't have much customization. I mean, there's some there, but it's more a matter of like you place 2 or 3 NPCs on the map and carefully chosen locations and call it good. Overall, I thought it was a lot of fun because, as I mentioned, it's a non-combat map, and that makes it different. And he actually made something that I found to be challenging, even though it was just walking around and finding people. So yeah, I definitely recommend that one for people who like challenges. Oh yeah, by the way, that's a Fed mission. Go ahead.
I was going to say, do you know the author?
Imzadi Diana. That was the name of the authors, Imzadi Diana. Let's see here. Let's do a quick look. Okay, maybe I spelled it wrong.
Well, it's okay. I mean, so you actually had another mission you wanted to review, right?
Yes. So that mission was actually somewhat short, so I decided that I was going to switch to KDF and then fly around until I managed to find a KDF top 3 mission that wasn't at a social zone. And I eventually found one at Alhina named Hunt, and it was written by someone named Bentiller. See here. This actually is a relatively simple mission, but it's a very combat-heavy mission, and it definitely has a story to it. Puzzles? No. You wander around and shoot things. Lots of things. No puzzles. The premise is that you have been invited to a special vacation planet set up by the Klingon Empire, which is a big game preserve. So you and your crew beam down, and you do a little bit of hunting on the surface, which he made good use of the assorted kinds of animals that we have that you can place on there. It's like targs, sealots, and I don't remember exactly what all of the stuff he used, but stuff like that. So you wander around, and after you've been hunting for several hours, you are told that your area is about to be hit with a heavy storm, and that you need to find shelter before this storm hits. Well, that seems odd, considering that the Klingons do have environmental controls. Oh wait, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Anyway, so you have to take shelter from the storm. So you enter this building that is one of the maintenance personnel's buildings, and you go inside the building to take shelter from the storm. Then you look around and realize that the maintenance personnel that are supposed to be inside the building are dead. So you do a little exploration of the inside of the building and examination of what the what it's like on the inside. And well, the first thing you find out is that the game preserve is actually run by a group of Ferengi. The second is that someone had been trying to blackmail the Ferengi, and then eventually when the blackmail didn't work out as well as they were hoping it would, they killed him. And now you end up having to go and do something about the fact that somebody killed the Ferengi guy. Well, actually, this is where it's one of those rather weird things, is that, see, it turns out that the Ferengi's goal with this is that the Romulans had been blackmailing him to try to assassinate high-ranking members of the Klingon Empire with this sport hunting planet. So, you know, they would invite people to the planet, then attempt to I guess you could say assassinate them. Obviously, this doesn't work in your case, but while you're inside the Ferengi's building, a group of Romulans beam in and try to shoot you in the back. And well, let's face it. This is the part where the story ends and the bloodbath begins. So you shoot the Romulans that are inside the building. Then one of your bridge officers tells you that the storm has abated enough that you can go back outside. And then you, well, next you massacre several groups of Romulans and Hirogen on your way back to the base camp at the hunting preserve because, well, you know, this seems like the sort of thing you should tell the people at base camp, right? Well, when you get to base camp, you find out that it's about to be attacked by a really, really big group of Romulans and Hirogen. I think he dropped 6 captain mobs as friendlies on the base camp, and I don't know how many enemy mobs. I didn't have a chance to count them.
So it was a lot.
Yeah. Like I said, leaving the Ferengis building, that's where the story ended and the bloodbath began. Because you have to go through a lot of enemies on that map. Which is actually pretty fun. I actually ended up getting KO'd twice. Both times because I took a plasma grenade to the face and for some unknown reason didn't notice. Yeah, I don't understand that, but whatever. Anyways. Then, after you take care of that, you beam up to your ship and hunt down the fleet that brought the Romulans and the Herodians to the planet. And, of course, you blow them up.
That sounds like you destroyed half the Romulan Star Empire.
Well, like I said, it was a mix of Romulan and Herodian ships. It's actually not a large group when you look at it in terms of the total number of, or still in the Romulan Star Empire, unless you are talking about Sila's group of the Romulans, anyways. This really seems like a Tal Shiar sort of thing, anyways.
Oh, we're the Herodian part of Sila's group?
Well, that's actually a good point, but the Herodian were kind of sort of like free agents, and it's possible that they're working with the Tal Shiar now, at least in a limited capacity, because when you encounter them on Mul Rihan, the Herodian are actually talking with members of the Tal Shiar and not attempting to shoot them. So either the Herodian aren't paying much attention to which Romulans they're talking to, or the Herodian, after Sila invited them to be allies of the Romulan Star Empire, decided to treat the members of the Tal Shiar the same way that they treated Sila's part of the Romulan Star Empire. But then again, it's also possible they decided that since the Tal Shiar more or less got rid of Sila as Empress, that the Herodian are going to be loyal to her, to the people that are in charge of the Romulan Star Empire now. But we don't really know. It's just guesswork. Anyways, though, yeah, the Herodian here is allies of the Romulan Star Empire, and well, it's obvious that they're Imperial Romulans, and I didn't see any specific reason to believe that they're not Tal Shiar agents, so, you know. And of course, let's face it, beaming into a maintenance building and attempting to shoot someone in the back is exactly what the Tal Shiar would do. Oh yeah, also you eventually find out that the guy who invited you to the planet was apparently an alias made up by a Tal Shiar operative.
So more or less, this entire planet was pretty much a way to assassinate people.
The game preserve was actually originally established by a Ferengi who was hoping to profit off of, you know, building a little resort for Klingons. I mean, that part of it was actually legit. It's just that the Romulans decided to blackmail him into doing things their way, and apparently he didn't go along with it, and that's why they killed him. Overall, I thought it was a pretty good mission. There were a few minor niggles that I found to be rather annoying. One of them is that both space maps, you start out in aggro range of the enemies and they start shooting at you before you finish zoning in. That, kind of annoying. But, it wasn't really all that bad because they're not, you know, concentrating on you because there's all those NPC space mobs around too. Oh yeah, also he wrote this as one of those battles where enemy reinforcements arrive while you're fighting, and I didn't pay close attention to how the reinforcements spawned, but it looks like some of them at least were actually triggered based on killing one of the previous mobs. So you kill mob A, then mob B shows up as to replace them. So until you've killed everyone, you in that particular line of enemies, But yeah, kind of a fun battle because it's not one of those things where you start out with like 20 enemies, then you kill 20 enemies and you're done. It actually made it so that you start out with, I have no idea how many exactly, I didn't count them, but you start out with a certain number of enemies, then as the battle progresses and you kill them off, more show up in the middle of the fight. It was actually a lot of fun because it wasn't just like a single massive fleet. Oh, well. It also made doing a space map where it's nothing but a battle a lot more interesting than it would be otherwise because it prolongs the battle without making the battle ridiculously hard.
So overall, would you recommend this mission?
Yeah, it was pretty good. If you suck at ground combat, you will die a lot. Because one thing I may not have mentioned is that those enemies that were chucking plasma grenades at me, yeah, those were Captain Rank Romulan mobs.
All right. So why don't we move on to discussion topics? Mark, did you have any the topics that you wanted to bring up?
One thing people that were discussing on the forum recently was attempting to interpret the motives of the Iconians. Because, the Iconians have done several things that, from a human perspective, seem stupid. Like, like Imtara showing up to give you a lecture about how she's straining herself too hard and is about to keel over from exhaustion. And she does that, and she just like walks up in front of you and talks about how she's so weak and nearly dead. And you just kind of like scratch your head and you're just like, wait a second. Why are you telling me this in person? Why aren't you like hiding in a corner where you're not going to get shot? Which, of course, that sort of thing kind of sparked an interesting discussion on the forums. And one thing that I thought of about that is that the Iconians have this huge megalomaniacal bent to them.
Yeah, they definitely kind of consider themselves invulnerable.
I mean, because that was actually part of Imtara's speech that she gave. It's like, you're the only person who has ever caused me this much pain, or something or other. Oh, wait, no, the first time in 200,000 years. I forget the exact, but you get the idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that's kind of hard to predict them, mostly because we don't have a full understanding of them. Obviously, they're trying to regain territory, but at the same time, to quote Battlestar Galactica, they have a plan, and we don't actually get to see what that plan is, at least not yet. At the same time, I think you're kind of right that the line was a little forced. I should say forced, but stating the obvious. They were all. I mean, it was all already kind of well established that the what was going on and why. So it was a little weird to have her come out and acknowledge it versus saying like something like, "What have you done?" or some other kind of generic shock that isn't so much saying, "You've done this thing." But I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, what are you going to do?
I suppose you could rationalize it as saying that Imtara had started to become delirious. I because if you look at it in that context, then maybe she didn't actually stop and think about the whole what will happen if I do this sort of thing.
Yeah.
Because
that could very well be.
Imtara had mentioned that it had literally been since the fall of Iconia 200,000 years ago that she'd been in a situation like that.
Yeah, and it's almost kind of hard to say when you are under that kind of shock. If you get, I hope nobody has any personal experience with this, but if you were to get stabbed fatally, what would your dying words be? I would argue that you and your current present sound mind state have absolutely no way of even predicting what you would say when you're in that state of shock.
Yeah.
So it may come out coming as incredibly goofy.
Well, one thing that occurred to me when I was pondering this as part of discussing it is that the Iconians have, as part of their default mindset, this incredible, overwhelming arrogance that, as someone reminded me on the forums with Babylon 5, is that what was the flaw that what was the great mistake of the Vorlons? Thinking they were better than everyone else.
Well, it seems to be a common mistake and a very human one, actually.
Right, but the Iconians take it to a rather stupid level, and it's like what Imtara says there, is that she's like, I'm a god, you're puny mortals, get away from me or I'll kill you. That's the basic way her initial conversation with you goes. And, that sort of thinking, when the bad guys are actually thinking like that and actually have even a half-baked reason for thinking like that, it makes it very difficult to actually predict what they're going to do from a human perspective.
Up until that point, she was kind of right. There wasn't a lot we could do against them. It took everything we had just to wound one of them before, and a whole lot of setting up specific circumstances. I know PSutherland, if he hadn't lost his connection, would have. He has this picture he likes to throw up of one of his characters pointing a phaser at the Iconians, and I always kind of want to tell him, I was like, yeah, I don't think that would actually do anything, or at the very least, it would fail to kill the Iconian. Or even really
I remember that particular picture was actually someone else's characters, and it looks like one of them is using the phaser as a distraction while one of the other ones clubs the Iconian upside the head. I'm not sure if that would actually do anything either, but hey,
Yeah, so obviously, getting back to the mission, it kind of there's nothing more dangerous than a cornered enemy, and having someone who that powerful who goes from the thinking that they're more or less immune to suddenly realizing that they're mortal can have very dire consequences, which I'm sure will be explored in the upcoming episode.
Well, another thing that came out of it that my thinking is seeing the results of a being like that. It's like, what would they actually do if they suddenly found themselves half powerless and just couldn't really do anything? Because in her case, she seemed to be kind of dazed and disoriented, and well, I'm not sure she knew what she was going to do next.
Yeah. All right, so why don't we move things along? Jorgen actually left me with a list of author's challenges. We've kind of done this in the past before, where he sets down a series of challenges. And unfortunately, due to the storm, he couldn't stick around and give these himself. But I have actually loaded up the Foundry here, and I'm going to see what it is he actually intended for me. So looking through his notes here. So the first challenge that he gave is to create a spacewalk on the hull of a ship.
Yeah, that's a fun one, all right.
And it's actually one that, up until recently, would have been incredibly difficult to do. But thankfully, I'm going to need I guess I can do an indoor map. Okay, so I'm going to actually steal one of the cave maps, because I happen to know that cave interior VO2 is massive. Oh, need a name. Let's call it Spacewalk. All right, so with the advent of, or the recent addition of the one-to-one scale starships, we now have our ground scale starships. We now have a selection of very nice and very big ships to choose from that are all on the incredible size. So let's see what would be a good one. Now, the one downside to these ships is most of them are not flat, making them not the greatest thing to run around on. And B, are very undetailed when you get really close to them.
Yeah, I kind of got the impression that what they are is basically just enlarged versions of what you see as a ship costume.
Yeah, they're literally scaled up versions of the ships we fly around, which were only really meant to take up a small portion of the screen. All right, so I've actually got the Galaxy class out here, or not the Galaxy, the Odyssey class, and I'm going to use that for our ship because I've happened to play around with this before and notice that it actually has a nice space in between it. Now, this is going to require a little bit of trial and error because, I mean, even in addition to, I can't really see the outline right now until we get the bug in the editor fixed, but I also kind of have to guess at the size because with ships this big, it's easy to forget that they are utterly massive. I mean, I'm trying to remember, the Sovereign was like 700 meters long. So that's like 7 football fields. And consider another 100, 150 meters tall. So you can be working with rather massive scales. Oh, and I seem to have gotten it pretty close. All right, so here in this instance, I have got, I found that the Odyssey has this really nice section running along the neck. That's good because it doesn't have a ton of detail. So, say for instance, I tried to get closer and closer and closer to these windows, and pretty soon I'll notice those are not very high detail windows. In fact, if you get close enough, you can kind of see that they're not actually flush with the surface. Now, there are reasons for this. The big one being is that normally these ships are much tinier, and so they have to offset the windows just a little bit in order to make sure that they don't flicker. Which anyone who has been building in the Foundry with walls on, and you get 2 walls that have planes exactly the same thing, will have that flickering effect. So you have to offset them.
With the ship costume, the windows are a separate object from the hull of the ship. I mean, it's kind of like with your character, and your character's gloves aren't part of your sleeve, and your pants and your shirt, so that things can't match up perfectly.
Yeah, and the primary reason they do this is so that you can customize it, so they can swap the textures on different layers depending on what choices you make for like windows and.
Not that we can do this with this version of the object, but it's why the object is constructed that way.
No, they turn it into a regular non-customizable object when they import it. But as you can see, the distance is really quite long, so you can do a do like a full segment where your ship has to, or you have to get through the ship.
I was actually looking closely at the vault model and realized there's I don't remember where on the vault it is, but somewhere on the vault there is a window that is like, or something, I forget exactly what. It's just like a piece of the model that's just like hanging out, like it kind of like if someone was to like open a door and then just leave the door stuck that way. It doesn't really look like it's supposed to be that way, but eh.
All right, so one other thing to point out is the space environment. Now, this is a little hard to test in the Foundry because our test characters typically don't have spacesuits. But if you're doing a spacewalk, you're in space, and you kind of want the player to have to use spacesuits. So you can place that down. The one tricky part with this is that you kind of need a space for the character to respawn if they die. That isn't inside the space volume. Now with map, and see what happens if I spawn into a space volume. At least I can't breathe in space anymore. So what you could do is I'd kind of considered you've got this neck area, so perhaps you could build a like a small room that inside the neck area, and then have that as an area that they can't that they can respawn in safely and put on their spacesuit if they stupidly decide to take it off or something like that. Which is another reason I kind of like this model, because it's got this cool space. But that if you're good enough, you can make it. They won't notice that you're actually building it on top of the Starship instead of inside of it. All right, so that is the nuts and bolts of building a spacewalk. Obviously, if you were doing it, you want to add some tasks to do on it. I recently found out that the Iconian constructs are immune to space volumes. So if you were doing, say, wanted to do an Iconian mission, you could have some of the ensign mobs appearing on the hull of your ship, and you could be fighting them in your spacesuit. Obviously, you can't go really in higher because then you get into the herald mobs, which are living beings and therefore subject to the space volume. As
interesting. Yeah.
As counterintuitive as it seems, I can also confirm that the Tholian ground mobs are subject to the space mobs. Their suits will not protect them. I guess their suits are more or less just visual and don't have any impact on the gameplay.
Actually,
double check that one.
Didn't someone once make the observation that the Tholians, even though they are wearing EV suits, if you were to place the Foundry version of Tholians onto a map that uses the volume effect from Nukara, it would actually kill them?
We don't actually have the volume effect from Nukara, but I wouldn't be surprised. It's one of those things that they were probably programmed just like normal NPCs, like every other NPC in the game. They didn't didn't expect to be used in any specific environment, so they didn't necessarily have to make them immune to the new car. At the same token,
it would actually make sense for them to be. Well, I mean, I suppose you could rationalize it that their suits weren't designed to work in a low pressure environment, and the low pressure is what causes their suits to fail.
yeah, I mean, obviously there has to be some transitionary environment where they can don the suits. But I mean, if you look at it from a gameplay standpoint, I mean, I'm sure when Cryptic was building this, if they were to use not icons, Tholians in a Y-class environment, they expected that they would be unsuited Tholians. When they built the suited ones, they expected to use them in the normal environment. So it's mostly just an issue of situations in which the devs just didn't really foresee.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, I suppose. Actually, now that I think about it, we do have some indication from some of the episodes that the Tholian suits really aren't very durable.
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm sure we could probably come up with some kind of a in-fiction reason for it, but yeah, I'm pretty sure it's just dev plans when they originally built it didn't include.
Mm. Well,
All right.
because I was just thinking that when you have the mission we have to fight off the Herald attack on New Romulus, you find a bunch of dead Tholians that had gotten shot by the Heralds.
I think that was more meant to make the Heralds look tough.
Well, it made some comment about how when the Heralds shot the Tholians, it caused their suits to rupture, and that it wasn't a simple matter of them just killing the Tholians.
All right, so why don't we move on to the next challenge that Jorgen left for me, and that is create a battle where the player has to get past several optional mobs, in parentheses, no kill objective, to get to the mobs kill objective that only shows up once the player has gotten past the other mobs. All right, so I kind of wish he was here to explain this a little bit. Okay, so
well, if
I
remember right, you can't actually trigger the spawning of a mob that is a kill objective because it's hard linked to spawn when the kill objectives start.
Yeah.
You could make a fake. You could make a fake kill objective where the name of the objective is is more or less the same as the actual kill objective, or it's worded to sound like it's a kill objective, I suppose, so another way to put it. But it's actually a move to location thing, and then when you complete that one, it triggers the kill objective, at which point the actual enemies show up.
Yeah, so I mean, there's kind of two ways to go about this. First off, we can seal off access to the enemy, or we can just make him like surround him in like an invisible wall and prevent him from being or interacted with until we're ready. So of those two, I'm probably going to go with the latter because it's a little more fun, interesting. So let's go with that. So I'm actually going to do a staggered battle here, so that you have to. There's kind of everybody's there, but they're going to fight you in waves. And I can show a little something else while I'm doing that. All right, so let's start out with our groups. Let's so what are some good enemies here? Let's go with some Dominion. I don't want to do anything as challenging as Commander. Let's just go with some ensigns for now. Let's not make this too hard. All right, so or better yet, let's do it this way. We are going to have 2 ensigns. And then we'll just throw down a lieutenant commander. Obviously, if you wanted to make this a boss battle, you go with a captain. All right, so in order to prevent these guys from actually, let's go ahead and set up our kill objective. So we got on our map, and we're going to put in a single kill objective, and I'm just going to call it defeat the Jemadar. I'm not going to do a waypoint. I guess I can, yeah, okay. So I'm going to add our captain level mob here, or our commander level mob, just to get things set up. All right, so obviously it's just one objective and it's nice and clean, but we want to add in a invisible walls in here. Nice tall ones. 20 will do. Okay, so how do we want to work this? So let's throw in. We're throwing a place or a place marker here. And this is going to be our initial trigger. So I'm actually going to tie that into an initial objective. All right, so when the the first to reach marker, so we approach, the idea is we're going to enter the room here, set off this reach marker, and this is going to trigger our initial dialog box here. And do a component reached with our reach marker. And I'm just going to say Dria's life, you will not live this day. Okay, so I'm sorry, it's not glorious text, but it's enough to get you the gist. Okay, so our first, we're going to set up our invisible walls on the first group, and it is actually going to be set to, not dialog parts, we're going to want a component complete in this case. And we're going to actually use our dialog tree as our source. And when the dialogue tree completes, it's going to drop the invisible wall around the first group. So something I've been running into a few issues lately with invisible walls blocking enemies, and sometimes they can pop through, which is a very undesirable effect. So I've actually been going to double walling my walls. The idea being is if they somehow push through the first, they're pushed back by the second. That's just kind of an extra measure I've been taking. All right, so the walls will drop. I'm going to actually move this group just a little bit closer. Okay, just so that they're within firing range when the wall drops, and so they'll attack immediately. Okay. So we want a second dialogue tree, and this one is going to be a component complete, and we are going to trigger it off of the death of the first group. So once the first group dies, this triggers the second dialogue. Pull up our Jemadar. And he says, you may have survived the first waves, but Jemadar never give up. Then he orders Group Beta to attack. Which, I mean, I realize this whole scenario is a little bit cliched, but it's illustrating the mechanic, not necessarily my on-the-fly writing skills. Okay, so this will trigger once this group is dead. So we got this second group. I need another invisible wall. We're going to change this guy. And I'm sure as we talked before in the past, we always love to set our triggers before we duplicate an object a bunch of times. It saves so much time. And this one is going to drop when the second dialogue tree is completed. And as always, carefully double wall. Okay. So we got our second battle going there. And we need one file on dialogue tree, which we are going to trigger when that second group is just defeated. And it is going to say, our Jemadar guy, fine. Fine, I'll take care of you myself. And that is some Marvel grade writing right there. All right, so we need our final group there. We need an invisible wall to surround him. And we're going to set our trigger to be when the third dialogue is triggered. All right, so we got our 3 groups. Didn't mean to catch that there. All right, so everything's set. The stage is set. The triggers have been placed. Just get my spawn point there a little bit closer. Let's see how this plays out. You ever do this sort of thing, Mark? And at some point, I lost Mark. Wow, this is becoming a very lonely podcast. Okay, well, let's see how this goes. All right, so we've triggered our first initial reach marker. You can see we've got our 3 groups surrounding. That's a lot of Jemadar. I noticed one of them is putting a shadow onto the... All right, so he orders the attack. And they're a little bit too far away. But let's coerce them into attack. Okay, the group's down. He goats us again. Orders his second group to attack. These guys are actually close enough. All right. And the final group attacks, and turns out he's not as tough as he thought he was, even if he is an elder. All right, and the group is down. Now, as I mentioned, there's kind of another way to interpret that challenge there, and that was to isolate the final boss in, say, like a closed-off room. In which case, you would just have a triggered door that doesn't release until the 3 previous groups are tied to a kill objective. So, or I guess in this case, it would look something like this. Let's say door. You'd have a door like that. That was set to despawn when complete, and instead of like consoles or something like that, we would actually select our squads, and you can actually see you can add objects right here to kind of create sort of a lead all scenario. So you'd have to destroy both before you can say get to the boss behind the door. And that's how you would do that. All right, so as much as it's fun to have the Dragoon only show, I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up and finish up with the contact info. We can be reached at foundryroundtable@live.com. We are also on Twitter at Foundry Roundtab. Dragon can be reached at Dragon1701. Mark can be reached at Markhawkman, and I can be reached at Greendragoon. I want to thank you all for sticking around with what ended up being just me, and I will see you all next week. Good night.